Hey, this is a video for people who have been using Scythe for a little bit now and may not know about all these little secret tips and tricks that aren't obvious in here, but I don't know, they're a little hidden sometimes. So that's what this is all about. So the first one is if you hit F, it zooms to the selection, and that's an Unreal thing, but if you select in one of these element modes and hit F, it also frames it up all nice. And it works for all the different elements. And then next is path drag. You probably just saw me do it, but if you click and hold, you can select everything that you drag through. This is new to 0.3.0, which is the version that I'm on. If you double click, it flood fills. Flood fill select. So, and it flood fills, so, this is the same mesh technically, but it won't jump over to the next one. If you want to select all of them, you can hit Control A, or you can hold down Shift and double click over here. And then next is, we're not able to use Alt in the Unreal Editor. We can't Alt and click, basically. So instead, I have to have an alternate Alt key, and that's, for now, it's caps lock, but it's also mouse 4 and mouse 5 as of 0.3.0. So you have those three choices to use for the poor man's alt. So when I hold down a poor man's alt like mouse 4 and double click, it's going to select the contiguous faces. So if I hold down Shift and do the same thing, it does that. So it doesn't just choose the exact same normal, it actually has a little bit of leniency here. If you go over here, and I should rename this because it's not good UX. It's, alternate plus double click. Right now it's doing the use normal, and then this is the angle of the difference of the double clicked face that it'll flood fill to. So if it's over this angle 13, it won't flood fill to it. So for instance, you can kind of see there's a little bit of angle here. You can see there's a deep angle here, and then there's just a little angle. So at 13, if I were to Alt double click that, you see it flood fills over here, and it doesn't go over there. And then if I were to change this to 6, I guess, and then do the same thing, now it won't go anywhere. And then on that note, if I do this, I'll change that back to 13 because that's the default. Um, if you don't really use that much and you really want just to do the material stuff, you can select all the materials by doing that Alt double click. And it'll select all the material faces as the one that you use to double click. So I can hold down Shift and do the same thing, and I just selected that one too. Super useful. And then for edges over here, if you double click, it selects the loop. Super useful. And the select loop code is pretty simple, so sometimes you'll feel like, oh, this isn't working or whatever, but I hope to make that better in the future. On something simple like this one, this like, beautiful mesh, it knows what to do. There's also marquee select. This is Unreal. This is an Unreal thing, but a lot of people don't know about it. Control Alt, you hold those two down and drag, and you can do that. It's okay. Lift material. This is a secret one here. So if you look over here at the active material, you'll see it's just the generic one right now. But if I if I hold down Shift and right click any of these faces here, you'll see it picks it up. It lifts the material and puts it there, so you can kind of just, grab that any time. Instead of having to dig through and try to find that thing again, you can just grab it real quick and place it. I'll show. I'm sure I go through this in other videos, but I'm just going to make sure you guys understand the block tool tricks. So this is a normal. Oh, let me fix that. This is a normal just drag out here, but if I hold down Control, see, tap and Control, it flips it up so you can easily make a wall. And then if I hold down Shift, it'll match the grid normal. It doesn't really match the face normal so much. And then while holding Shift, drag that out, it'll do that. It's super useful for blocking out, extremely useful. Then the dev textures over here, I have, type in Scythe dev, I've got 6 of them. And if you don't see these here, if you did this and don't see this here, you gotta go here and show plugin content, and suddenly they'll show up. But if you don't want to select it there and you just want shortcuts, there are shortcuts. There's Shift Alt 1, we'll select that one, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah. Except it's like texel density. Texel density, I try to explain this in a lot of videos and I'm usually failing, but I got a Minecraft block here that should help explain it. So I'm gonna switch to 100 units. So you'll see that this is 1 meter. 100 units is 1 meter in Unreal. So these are my current settings. 1 meter is 128 pixels. So if I select this here and make it my main, Minecraft textures are 16 by 16. So if I select all and then apply material, you'll see, oh, that's just tiling way too much. But if I set 1 meter is 16 pixels and then I do this again, align to grid. This, by the way, if you don't know about this, you should be clicking this all the time. Control Shift G, by the way. Now that I did that, now it's 16 pixels for this 1 meter. And it'll always be that much. So if I do this again and it stretches, I'll fix that in the future. If I align a grid again, it's always 16 pixels per meter. Perfect texel density. Do that a little bit here. And then, I don't even know if I need to go into these, but, I think you kind of get this. These settings here for 128, 1 meter is 128. So, there's a 64 by 64 texture and so on. So you'll see that this is half a meter because it's only 64 instead of 128 here. 128 fits perfectly in 1 meter. 256 fits in 2 by 2 and so on. So that I hope that explains things. And then if you're working with texel density and you're like, it's not working, I don't get it. I'm setting my stuff and it's the same every time. Your settings are probably incorrect. So, and by settings I mean you need to go, to here, site settings, project settings specifically, and then right here, the base color names here. So your your base color has to be named one of these, or if it's not and you have a custom one, you're on a huge project, you can add your own, just like so, because it's going to look through your materials and try to find one of these names, and if it finds it, first one it finds, it's going to use that as the texture, and it's going to get the texture size out of that texture and use that for your texel density. Oops. So that's how that works. So in my case, I name mine like so, if I go, here's my master material that will, this Minecraft thing, this instance here uses. And if I open it up over here, just drag this here, you'll see that's the name of it right there. And that's the texture. And so you just have to make sure that you convert this to a perimeter and name it properly. I hope that makes sense. So if you know about Unreal Engine, that probably totally clicks with you. If not, you know, you can come to Discord and we'll figure it out together. But that's basically the gist. Texel density. Next up is the Power 2 grid. A lot of people like to map in Power 2s. So me clicking this, you see how this is Power 10 here or whatever. If you click this, now you have Power 2 grids here. So if I do like so here, I can actually make a new block. Two blocks here. Okay, so if you're working with textile density and you're like, oh, I really want my Minecraft blocks or whatever blocks to be, it's to fit the whole meter and not be this kind of awkward size. You have to set your meter right here. So, for instance, if you wanted your your Minecraft block or whatever texture to be 128 uh, pixels, you would set this just like that. And then, what am I doing? I'm clicking that. And then now it stretches perfectly and does the textile density according to that. So you do the same thing here and you're like, oh, I actually want my blocks to be 64 units instead of 128 units. You do 0.64 here. Hope that makes sense. I'm going to go back to default grid. So let's make this a little more of a fun texture here. I got to reset my settings. There we go. So if you hold down Shift and then drag it, you extrude. And you probably already know this, but if you don't, I want to make sure you know this because this is a huge workflow improvement here. So I'll do this. And if you hold down Shift Control and then move it, you do what's called push pull. And a push pull is an extrude, but it also is a boolean. So you can push into things and take away from it. Just like so. If you do a bunch of push pulls on a mesh, we only did one there, so it's not too bad. But if I'm in triangle mode right now. If your triangles go nuts and there're just too many of them, and you really want to cut it down, you can, select a face, Control A to select all, and then do a clean. And we'll see if it works. It did. So remember there was extra triangles here. There was a vertex right here, and it cleaned it all up. And now I'd actually call that pretty perfect. I think that's perfect. So that's how to do that. But a tip about this is if you've done clean and you notice that your polygroup edges here, these are polygroup edges because we're in the polygroup selection mode. If you notice they're kind of cut in two, it's one selection but it has two measurements on it, and you're kind of like they're just acting funny. You have to go to, I'll fix this in the future. We'll get it. You have to go to modeling mode, model, polygroup, edit, and then make sure this is selected. Select all, simplify by groups, select all, retriangulate, accept. And then that will go back to Scythe, and then that'll fix them. That's just if that happens, that's what you gotta do as of 0.3.0. Um, oh, it shows some tilde stuff. Well, let's show a really cool thing. So this is new. If you hold down middle mouse button and you move this, you're you're temporarily changing the pivot of this face. So what can we do with that? If we go into rotate or E and then hold shift and then move this, we just extruded and then we can continue to extrude and it goes around that pivot. Look at that. And then let's say we only want to go that much, but we want to go just straight out from the space. How do we do that? Well, you select this here or hit Control tilde. And now that changes to a local frame. And then you can go straight out. So now you can see like, oh, we're starting to make some interesting things here. I got a little trick here. I don't know if this is going to survive to release, but it depends on if it gets in my way with some stuff. But um, there's a little justification trick with scale. So this is scale here on, so I'm gonna just scale this up. And you notice it scales it from the center. Reset that. What if I wanted to scale it from one of these corners or the side or whatever? If I justify it left and then let's just do the bottom down. You scale out now and notice it's scaling from the left side here. Then when I scale up, it's scaling from this side. So it's scaling from this corner right here. So you can see how this could be pretty useful if you just need to do a slight adjustment to something and you're just really having some issues lining everything up. I think, oh, I got one more thing. So let's say I wanted this face here to be in line with like this face here, and maybe I didn't want to like eyeball it or be like, oh, am I on grid perfectly or whatever, I would grab this and I hold down, the poor man's alt, which is caps lock. I should note, mouse 4 and mouse 5 don't work with this right now because Unreal Engine is just, you know, it's just being a thing right now. Okay, so hold down caps lock and then you can align it to different parts of itself or in the world too. So if I wanted to be on this face here, just let go, and now it's perfectly aligned. Other than that, I think that is it. Double check on my notes real quick. Yeah, that's it. So I hope you learned something and keep scything. I'll see you later.